Hi everyone. So today I would like to explain about the chapter entitled Popular Methodology from the Practice of English Language Teaching by Jeremy Harmer. So let's get started. Okay, first we will discuss about the differences among approach, method, procedure, and technique before we go further about the methodology used in teaching language. People use the term approach to refer to theories about the nature of language and language learning. These provide the reasons for doing things in the classroom and the reasons for the way they are done. Method is the practical classroom realization of an approach. The organizers of method have arrived at decision which will bring the approach they believe into life. A procedure is an order sequence of techniques and sequence which can be described in terms such as first you do this, then you do that, and this is smaller than a method and it is bigger than a technique. And then about three and a half methods. The three and a half methods offer several ways in teaching language, especially in for grammar. And there are grammar translation method in which students were given in their own language explanations of individual points of grammar, and then they were given sentences which exemplify these points. And the sentence had to be translated from the target language or L2 back to the student's first language or L1 and vice versa. The direct method was the product of a reform movement which was reacting to the restrictions of grammar translation. In grammar translation, language is learned deductively, and in the direct method, grammar is learned inductively. And then audiolingualism. And this is relied heavily on drills to form these habits. Substitution was built into this drill so that in small steps, the student was constantly learning and moreover was sh- uh, shalt, sheltered from the possibility of making mistakes by the design of the drill. Okay, and then about communicative language teaching. Communicative language teachers taught people to invite and apologize, to agree and disagree, alongside making sure they could use the past perfect or the second conditional. The teacher would not intervene to stop the activity, and the materials he or she relied on would not dictate what specific language forms the students used either. Such activities attempt to replicate or mimic real communication. Okay, in the slide is the difference between non-communicative activities and communicative activities. The communicative activities clearly let the students to practice and improve their own ability in English through the natural communication conduct in the language learning class. And then we are moving into the teaching unblock. About the teaching unblock, Tom Woolley and Mattings want to challenge an over reliance on materials and technical wizardry in kernel language teaching. Therefore, Tukme ELT has the following features. First, conversation-driven is interactive talk in the classroom procedure, and this interaction takes place not only between the students, but also between the students and the teacher. Second, it is purposefully materialized so that Jokme teachers respond to their students' needs and interest, rather than bringing in prepackaged materials such as course books. Third, it focuses on emergent language rather than following a prescribed syllabus. The role of the teacher in this view is to respond to the language that comes up, interacting with students and helping them to say what they want to more correctly and perhaps better. And next about the task-based learning. Task-based learning or TBL is sometimes referred to as task-based instruction or task-based language teaching. And this is makes the performance of meaningful tasks central to the learning process. It is informed by a belief that if students are focused on the completion of a task, they are just as likely to learn language as they are if they are focusing on language forms. As you can see in the figure 2, Jen really suggests three basic stage. First, the pre-task stage. In this stage, In this stage, the teacher explores the topic with the class and may highlight useful words and phrases, and then help the students to understand the task instruction. The students may hear a recording of other people doing the same task. And the second, the task cycle stage. During this stage, the students perform the task in pairs or small groups while the teacher monitors from a distance. The students plan how they will tell the rest of the class what they did and how it went, and they then report the task either orally or in writing and compare notes on what has happened. And the third is the language focus stage. In this stage, the students examine and discuss specific features of any listening or reading task which they have looked at for the task, and the teacher may conduct some form of practice of specific language features which the task has provoked and over offline correction. And then for the lexical approach, a lexical approach would steer us away from an over concentration on syntax and tense usage towards the teaching of phrases which show words in combination and which are generative in a different way from traditional grammar substitution tables. The typical tasks include asking students to add in the intensifier to semi-fixed expression. It's obviously something's gone wrong. For example, it is mean quite. And Cathay students, once they have read the text, to underline all the nouns they can find, and then to underline any verbs that collocate with those nouns. And word order exercise can be adapted to focus on particular phrase components. Teaching lexically means thinking about the naturalness of what we might teach and always teaching words together with the other words. Okay, next is about our old humanistic methods. And the methods are community language learning, and in its classic form, a knower stands outside a circle of students and helps them see what they want to say by translating, suggesting, or amending the students' utterances. And then next is Suggestopedia. In this method, students need to be comfortable and relaxed so that their affective filter is lowered. And then students take on different names and exist in a child-parent relationship with the teacher. And then total physical response. A typical TPR lesson might involve teachers telling the students to pick up the triangle from the table and give it to me, or walk quickly to the door and hit it. And then next is the silent way. This is one of the most notable features of the silent way was the behavior. One of the most notable features of the silent way was the behavior of the teacher, who rather than entering into conversation with students, said as little as possible. And then a procedure. About the procedures that the teacher can conduct in language learning. In the left side is a PPP procedure by Bryant. It is highly teacher-centered and seems to assume that students learn in straight lines, that is, starting from no knowledge, thought highly restricted sentence-based utterance, and then going on to immediate production. In this situation, which contextualize the language to be taught, the language is then presented. The students practice the language using accurate reproduction techniques such as choral repetition and individual repetition. Later, in the production phase, the students use the new language to make sentences of their own. And then in the right side, a different trilogy of teaching sequence elements called the ESA. E stands for engage because unless the students are emotionally engaged with what is going on, their learning will be less effective. S stands for study and describe any teaching and learning element where the focus is on how something is constructed, whether it is relative clauses, specific intonation patterns, the construction of a paragraph or text, and the way a lexical phrase is made and used, or the collocation of particular word. A stands for activate, and this refers to any stage at which students are encouraged to use all and any of the language they know. In the first straight rows in the figure 4 is the sequence is a size much like PPP, and the teacher engage the students by presenting a picture or a situation or by drawing them in by some other means. A boomerang procedure, on the other hand, follows a more task-based or deep end approach. And then here the order is as the teacher gets students engaged before asking them to do something like a written text, a task, a communication game, or a role play patchwork lessons in the figure 6, which are different from the previous two procedures, may follow variety of sequence. For example, English students might be encouraged to activate their knowledge before studying one and then another language element, and then returning to more activating tasks, after which the teacher engaged them before doing some more study and etc. And then the quality of life in any class. And then next, uh, about the post method and learning culture. The quality of life in any classroom is much more important than instructional efficiency. Teachers should determine and understand the classroom quality of life. They should identify a learning puzzle. A post-method wish list may reflect a set of cultural values which can be inappropriate in the context we are teaching in. A post-method wish list may reflect a set of cultural values which can be inappropriate. The most important things for any teacher is to know why they are doing things in lesson. Classroom activity that we initiate should be based on the fact that we believe the procedure we are using will achieve a certain outcome because with the benefit of our theoretical knowledge and our observation experience, it agrees with how we think people learn languages best. Using a procedure without that belief makes no sense. And then about the course books and the other material. Many institutions use the syllabus in course books as their organizing principle. For many, this is a huge relief. Given the time pressures they are under and the worry about the kinds of decision that they might otherwise have to make. For others, however, course books represent a block to creativity because they feel that the best lesson should be centered around the students in the room. Arguments in favor of course books use include the following. First, they are carefully prepared and offer a coherent syllabus and satisfactory language control. And then they are often attractively presented, and they provide lively, interesting material, topics, and texts. And then they are very useful for students to look at again to remind themselves of what they have been studying. And then uh, this is the example of the arguments that against the overuse of course books. The first, they impose learning styles which may not suit a particular group of students. And then they often rely on PPP as the default teaching procedure. And this may not be in the best interest of the students. And then they stifle some teachers' creativity because completing course book material becomes more important than real classroom communication, and also they are often planned uh, or to avoid any possible offense or cultural inappropriacy and therefore uninteresting. And then they are not about the students' current interest. And then uh, how to use course books. Most teachers, however, bring their own personalities, choices, and abilities to bear on the material they are using. In the case of the course book, there are a number of ways of doing this. The first is omit things that don't fit. If we find things in the book which are not appropriate for our students or things which we don't think are necessary, we can simply leave them out and then replace things with our own choices. And here we can replace what is in the course book with the material which we think will work better for us and our students, and then adapt and add things to adapt that we find there so that to adapt what we find there so that we make the contents come alive for our students. whilst at the same time reassuring them that the material is useful and can be used for revision. And then use and choose course book more effectively. One way of doing this is to make notes in our own copies of the book of the teacher's book. Perhaps you can put sticky notes on the relevant page, or we can keep a special notebook in much the same way that teachers who write reflective journals record their experience and think about how to change them. And the areas we may wish to consider when deciding what course book to choose include the following. The first is price and availability. It is important to know whether our students can afford the price of the materials and how many extras they will have to pay for. And then layout, design, and ease to use. What does the course book look like and how easy is to find your way around it? And then next is instructions. This is one of the elements that make a course book easy to use. And then the last is methodology. Oh, it's still a lot. Methodology, it is worth going through the material in detail and noting down the different procedures that are on ours. See if we agree with them and whether there is syllabus, and this is to see that is agrees with our views of what the students should be learning, or with an extra syllabus that we have to follow. And the rest is topic and content, and also we need to teachers guidance board. Okay, so designing our materials. When we are designing our own material, we need to consider a number of questions, which include what will it achieve. We have to be and here we have to be sure about exactly what we want our students to achieve. We need to predict what they will be able to do as a result of using the material we are designing. And then the second is, does it pass the TITO test? TITO is time in, time out. We need to be sure that the amount of the time we spend using the material in class and the benefits of using it, and then justifies the time we spend preparing and making it. And then, will it be easy to use? It is important to think carefully about how easy or at least convenient it will be for both us and the students to use the material. And then, can I use it again? If we are going to spend time developing our own material, we'll want to be sure that we can use it more than once. And then, will it engage students? If you really enjoy planning the material and if you feel really enthusiastic about it, that is a good start. And then for the looking forward, it is possible to given the pace and scope to technological change that the profession of English language teaching is about to change forever. And this is there are data analytic and adaptive learning, and this is teaching material become readily available online, and students can access what they need when they need it. And then also personal mobile devices in the room, and also the flipped classroom, and this is where the teaching is done online, and classroom activity concentrates on practice exercise. And the last is improvements in translation softwares. Okay, so that's all about methodology. Hopefully it will be useful for us, and thank you and see you.